and I'll hold off on Transnistria for the next section. Watch this space. We'll be back with more world news. And Transnistria news. Russia warns U.S., NATO, and Ukraine over Transnistria. Any action by Ukraine, this is mayornews.com, any action by Ukraine or the West that poses a threat to Russian peacekeepers or nationals in the Moldovan breakaway region of Transnistria will be seen as an attack on Russia, the country's foreign ministry has stated. It warned Kiev and its Western backers against carrying out provocations. According to Russia Today, in a statement released on Friday, Russian diplomats cited data from the country's defense ministry, according to which Ukraine has amassed considerable numbers of military personnel, as well as hardware and artillery on its borders with Transnistria. In light of this, Moscow warned the U.S., NATO member states and their Ukrainian underlings against any further adventurous steps. While Russia favors political, diplomatic ways of resolving issues, no one should have any doubt that the Russian armed forces will react appropriately to any provocation by the Kiev regime, the statement reads. Moscow stressed that it's determined to protect its citizens, its peacekeepers, and its military personnel stationed in Moldova's breakaway region. And from the Times now, Russia-Ukraine war live. Russian Defense Ministry claims Ukraine is preparing to invade Transnistria. And from English, alarabia.net, Moldova denies direct threat to Transnistria from Ukraine. Moldova's Ministry of Defense on Friday denied that any direct threat by Ukraine to its pro-Russian separatist region exists in an apparent response to Russian accusations that Kiev was planning to invade Transnistria. Moscow backed Transnistria as a narrow region bordering Ukraine, which after a war separated from Moldova in '92, Russian soldiers have been deployed there since. The Ministry of Defense monitors all events, actions, and changes taking place in the region and on the territory controlled by Tiraspol authorities, it said in the statement. We affirm that there is currently no direct threat to the military security of Transnistria, it added. The false information distributed is intended to create panic and confusion among people on both sides of the Dniester River. Earlier Friday, the Russian Foreign Ministry said that its army will respond to any provocation by Ukrainian forces in Transnistria. Moscow also reiterated its accusations, alleging Ukraine was deploying a large number of soldiers and arms at the border. In recent years, Moldova, a poor country of 2.6 million people, has taken a pro-Western turn, drawing Moscow's ire. Since the launch of the offensive in Ukraine a year ago, the Kremlin has been accused of raising tensions in Transnistria to destabilize Ukraine and Moldova. Russia's defense ministry on Thursday claimed that Ukraine has stepped up preparations for the invasion of Transnistria, and Moldova responded by saying that state authorities do not confirm the information released by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Earlier this month, Moldovan President Maya Sandu accused Russia of plotting to violently overthrow her government through saboteurs disguised as anti-government protesters, claims that Russia denied. On Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin revoked a 2012 decree that partly supported Moldova's sovereignty and was designed to serve as a framework to resolve the future of the breakaway region of Transnistria. The order signed Tuesday indicated that the decision was taken to guarantee the national interests of Russia in the context of profound changes taking place in international relations. And from AA.com, Russian Foreign Ministry warns U.S., NATO, Ukraine against reckless steps in Transnistria. Ministry says any actions posing threat threats to Russia's military contingent in breakaway Transnistria region will be considered under international law as an attack on Moscow. The Russian Foreign Ministry warned the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine against reckless steps in Transnistria amid an alleged deployment of the Ukrainian troops in the region in the battle order. In a statement on its official website, the diplomatic service, with a link to the Defense Ministry's data, said, Ukraine has accumulated a significant number of personnel, military equipment, and artillery in firing positions on the Ukrainian Transnistria border, unprecedentedly increased flights of its drones over the territory of Transnistria. We warn the U.S., NATO member countries, and the Ukrainian boards from the next reckless steps, the ministry said. Moscow consistently advocates for resolving any issues through political and diplomatic means. However, no one should have any doubts that the Russian army will adequately respond to the provocation and will ensure the protection of its compatriots, the Russian peacekeeping contingent, the servicemen of the operational group of Russian troops, and military depots in the locality of Kabazna in Transnistria, it emphasized. Any actions that pose a threat to the security or to their security will be considered in accordance with the international law as an attack on the Russian Federation, the ministry said. The Russian Defense Ministry on Thursday claimed that Ukraine's preparing an armed provocation against Transnistria, an unrecognized breakaway region internationally recognized as part of Moldova. The statement claimed that an offensive against Russian troops in the breakaway region is planned to be staged, with Ukrainian forces allegedly being dressed in the uniform of the Russian armed forces. In response, the Moldovan government said in a statement that authorities do not confirm the claims made by the Russian Defense Ministry. And from IntelliNews, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed on February 23rd that the Ukraine is preparing a complex operation aimed at eventually invading the pro-Russian separatist Transnistria region in Moldova. Moldova officials said that they're not in possession of such reports, and Russian statements are instead part of a hybrid war. There are fears that Russia will escalate the war in Ukraine and potentially embroil Moldova around the one-year anniversary of the invasion. The government in Kiev plans to carry out an operation under a false flag as a pretext for invading Transnistria in the near future, the Russian Ministry of Defense said on February 23rd. Russian diplomats said Kiev plans to stage what would appear to be an offensive by Russian troops from the territory of Transnistria. The invasion would then be carried out by units of the armed forces of Ukraine with the involvement of the Azov nationalist formation. For this, the Ukrainian saboteurs participating in the staged invasion will be dressed in the uniform of the military personnel of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, they added. Moldovan officials denied there was any threat that Ukraine would invade Transnistria, and the statements from the Russian Ministry of Defense about possible provocations of Ukraine in the Transnistrian region represent a psychological operation rather than real intentions, said the Secretary of State from the Moldovan Ministry of Defense, Valeria Mija, during the public space show on Radio Moldova. They follow a warning from Ukrainian intelligence that Moscow is plotting to destabilize Moldova, where it's long backed the separatist regime in Transnistria. Moldovan President Maia Sandu, Prime Minister Dorian Risian, and other Moldova officials have recently talked up scrapping the country's long-standing military neutrality and hinted that the country might consider NATO membership. That drew an angry response from Russian officials. Moscow's fierce opposition to Ukraine joining NATO was one of the reasons for Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. Meanwhile, the de facto government in Transnistria said that it has the situation under control and that no provocation will be carried out from its territory. The official noted, however, that the state authorities must carefully monitor the situation and be vigilant. The separatist authorities in Transnistria mentioned the Russian peacekeeping troops on their territory, saying that any intimidation gesture against them would be an unjustified crime. Diana Sanus of the think tank EESC in Lithuania and Moldova and a BNE IntelliNews columnists wrote on Twitter that it would make little sense of Kiev to attack Transnistria. The hysteria around the Transnistria region can be reduced if opponents of Russian aggression manage to establish a joint information front, he added. And from TRT World, Foreign Ministry says any actions that threaten Russia's security will be considered an attack on Moscow in accordance with the international law. The Russian Foreign Ministry has warned the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine against reckless steps in Transnistria amid an alleged deployment of Ukrainian troops in the breakaway region. In a statement on its official website, the diplomatic service with a link to the Russian Defense Ministry's data said on Thursday that Ukraine has accumulated a significant number of personnel, military equipment, and artillery in firing positions on the Ukrainian Transnistrian border, and unprecedentedly increased flights of its drones over the territory of Transnistria. We warn the U.S., NATO member countries and their Ukrainian boards from the next reckless steps, the ministry said. Moscow advocates for resolving any issues through political and diplomatic means. However, no one should have any doubts that the Russian army will adequately respond to the provocation and will ensure the protection of its compatriots, it's emphasized. On its first anniversary, Russia-Ukraine conflict has reached stalemate, with neither side having achieved its stated military goals, it says in that tweet. Armed provocation. Any actions that pose a threat to their security will be considered in accordance with international law as an attack on the Russian Federation, the ministry said. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed that Ukraine is preparing an armed provocation against Transnistria, an unrecognized breakaway region internationally recognized as part of Moldova. The statement claimed that an offensive against Russian troops in the breakaway region is planned to be staged, with Ukrainian forces allegedly being dressed in the uniform of the Russian armed forces. In response, the Moldovan government said in a statement that authorities do not confirm the claims made by the Russian Defense Ministry. And the dive with Jackson Hewitt, Ukraine and NATO. Jackson Hinkle, excuse me. Ukraine and NATO update here.
And the United Nations actually thanked Russia for doing that. So they have thoroughly infiltrated Ukrainian intelligence, and now what they have learned is that the Ukrainians are attempting to do this. Okay, so they're going to be dressing up like Russians. The implementation of the planned provocation by the Ukrainian authorities poses a direct threat to the Russian peacekeeping contingent deployed legally in Transnistria. The armed forces of the Russian Federation will adequately respond to the planned provocation of the Ukrainian side. That's according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. But there's been a little shakeup in Moldovan politics recently. Not anything revolutionary, but this right here. Freshly baked Prime Minister of the Republic of Moldova says Transnistria must be demilitarized, meaning he's saying they want, the Russian presence out, the peacekeeping presence that's been there for years, out of Transnistria. Prime Minister Doran Rysian said that Transnistria must be demilitarized. Russian troops must leave, after which it will be necessary to integrate the inhabitants of the region economically and socially. Remember the SMO in Transnistria when Moldovan troops were firing directing into houses? Yeah, we cleaned that up too. So Moldova is a country that will, in all likelihood, probably try as ambitions to join NATO, and it's not a part of it yet. But the Moldovan government right now is saying that they want the Russian peacekeepers out of Transnistria, and they're very serious about this. And I think it's probably something that, the Moldovan government is trying to do to show that they're willing to join NATO, and they're serious about joining NATO. They want to join NATO, okay?
Yeah, and in one sense you could say, okay, the Soviet Union was shrewd and conniving in creating this geopolitic based around these really small strips of land that could eventually be reunited to, it could reform the Soviet Union, but it also could just maintain border integrity at the same time. So, it could be shrewd, conniving, or it could be preventative. It's really hard to say.
The Moldovan people are not so happy about this. Massive demonstration 1 day ago, in Moldova in support of Russia. Take a look. They're chanting their support for Russia. You will definitely see no traces of this in Western mainstream media, Dmitry Polyansky, First Deputy Permanent Representative of Russia, has to say. It doesn't fit their perception of what people should think in Moldova, just as it doesn't fit the perception of Western elites when you see Ukrainians like Tatiana Montyan speaking out against the abuses and the efforts of the, captured Ukrainian government to go to war against the people of the Donbass and Russia as well. We saw this as well from the ousted Ukrainian presidential spokesperson Arestovich. I believe that was his name, right? If Moldova asks Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine will take Transnistria in 3 days, according to Arestovich. Yes. War Monitor tweeted this out and said, "Wake up, mom. New 3 days statement just dropped." Okay, so we'll see what happens. War Monitor also published this just earlier today. According to the Russian Defense Ministry earlier today, Kiev has stepped up preparations for the invasion of Transnistria, so they are further developing plans to do this. According to a very popular Ukrainian journalist, Lachin, they just posted this on his Telegram. Attention residents of the temporarily occupied territory of Moldova, basically implying that they're going to kick the Russian peacekeepers out because they see it as a temporary occupation. It wasn't too long ago, if you're concerned that maybe I'm getting the story wrong, look at this. It wasn't too long ago when NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg came out and said this right here about Moldova.
Including to NATO's comprehensive assistance package. This is providing Ukraine with food, fuel, medical supplies, counter-drone systems, and amphibious bridges. Ministers also discussed our commitment to our other partners at risk, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia and Moldova. And we agreed to step up tailored support to enhance their defense capabilities. Resilience.
So this is what NATO told Ukraine with their special partnership they've had for the past several years. They told Ukraine before this whole war broke out that we're going to increase our support for the defense potential of Ukraine. Now they're saying they're going to increase their support for the defense potential of Georgia and Moldova. Now we know who wants government change in Moldova. They got it, and now the new government, with this little shakeup, is saying that they want to push Russian peacekeepers out of Transnistria. And let me just be the first to tell you, it's going to take more than 3 days to push them out. And there will probably be, who knows, maybe not, but there will probably be a very large Russian response because of the fact that in Transnistria is one of the largest arms storage sites in all of Europe. I think it might be the largest in all of Europe. We also had this. War Monitor posted this. It is very important that we divert a part of the troops in that direction of Moldova because if a point of instability appears there, we have to react to it. So that's today at 2:35 p.m. after the Russian Defense Ministry said that Ukraine was preparing their provocation against Moldova. That was from the Secretary of Ukraine's Security and Defense Council. So now the Ukrainians are actually coming out and admitting the fact that, yes, we're going to be diverting troops to this part of Moldova. And now we have photo proof as well. Unconfirmed image reportedly showing AFU presence outside the town of Palanka, Moldova. Okay, so here you have what is thought to be Ukrainian troops moving in that direction. All right. And lastly, I want to show you this. Gonzalo Lira shared this video from Military Summary and Analysis channel on YouTube, giving a brief, pretty accurate analysis of the situation.
Hello, my dear.
That is currently unfolding in Moldova with Ukrainian efforts of a provocation. Let's take a look.
Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and this morning we have something to discuss. Today I took a decision to make an extra video this morning of the local time of 7 a.m. of local time. The thing is that the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation this morning reported that according to information they have, within the next few days, the Ukrainian army is going to make some kind of provocation on the territory of Moldova, or to be more precise, on the territory of Transnistria. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians have already accumulated their forces on the roads that connects in the vicinity of Balta and Okny, these two towns, and the Ukrainians accumulated their forces along these two roads, the first road on the north and the second road of the south. And the Russians are saying that the Ukrainians are planning to make some kind of provocation, that Ukrainians are planning to change their uniform and to use the uniform of the soldiers of Russian Federation. And using this uniform, the Ukrainians, according to the Russians, are planning to start some kind of fake offensive operation from Transnistria in direction of Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are planning to use this case as the case to begin their own special military operation in direction of Transnistria. The main thing that Ukrainians are going to achieve, according to the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, is to establish control over the warehouses that located on the territory of Transnistria. As you know, there are a lot of warehouses on the territory of Transnistria, the old Soviet warehouses, and the Ukrainians need them. The Ukrainians have lack of artillery systems. They have a lot of old Soviet artillery systems. They have a lot of Western artillery systems, but they don't have. The Ukrainians don't produce their own 152mm shells. And if they're able to establish control over the warehouses that located on the territory of Transnistria, then they will be able to continue. These shells will be enough for another year of war on the territory.
So, of course, this is all.
And there we have it. We'll return with more news. Make sure you watch this space. And remember, your engagement through a like, share, subscribe will propel us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.